Good afternoon, everyone. If I say our brain processes 11 million information beats every moment, and unfortunately, a few percent gets hold of it. Meaning, when we reach to logic, our brain has already decided. In the previous panel, we were talking about marketing, and specifically marketing at a time when the access barrier of marketing has faded. With AI and other assistive tools available, it's easier to reach, it's easier to connect. And when it's easier to connect, things becomes more cluttered. So let me put an example over here. How many of you are a Netflix user? Most of you? Netflix did a very interesting change to put a small icon for next episode. And that a trigger of next episode was instrumental for the Netflix to have the user hooked to itself. And this small changes is where the brain and the brand connection comes. The brain can virtually be divided into two parts, conscious and subconscious mind. Usually our marketing strategies focus on tapping the conscious mind. But the psychology says 95% of the sales happens at subconscious level. Let me put in this way. Suppose you enter a Apple showroom. Apple has a retail presence in Delhi now, so you might have heard. Or we go to Nike. They will never put an ad. You say you are going to buy a shoe. They put ad, just do it. So they are trying to sell an experience. They are trying to sell you a amazing and unforgettable trigger to your emotions. And this trigger to your emotion is something which is going to add value to you. Now, let me move and talk about what's neuromarketing. When barriers are easy to crack, and at low cost, you have lesser time. At this point of time when we are speaking, the attention span of an average human is around 6 seconds. Means a user is going to decide in first 6 seconds whether they are going to watch that ad of yours or not. And the next line is more scarier. This user attention span is decreasing like anything. It's anticipated to be around 3-4 seconds in say next few quarters or so. And this is also getting reflected because of your content fatigue. Say for example, I am a user, and there are n number of companies which are going to target me because I am the target customer. If I am going to look at 10 ads a day or say 15 ads a day, hardly by the end of day we remember that ad, what we saw. Why? Because I had seen so many, why should I remember it? We tend to forget. And this is where the neuromarketing comes. In simpler terms, neuromarketing is the science of understanding how the brain responds. And specifically, the subconscious mind of the brain. So this subconscious mind is where that comes. Talking about the story that how a person purchases. So there are 3 sciences in neurology which talks about buying, how a user is going to buy. The first is survival mode, where a person is seeking a safety or to avoid a threat. Our limbic brain, which is more about emotional center. This is where your feelings, memories, loyalty, social proof comes into picture. Last but not least, that is neocortex, your rational thinking, the logical brain. Usually, traditionally, we have been focusing on this rational neocortex to do the purchases. We are expecting the person to solve a problem, to logically process the information. So that's just the 5%. 90% of decisions have already happened before you reach to that. And when we come to this of relevance, our strategy also further need to evolve to include the personalization. Because the emotions are different. What is suited to me, what is triggering happiness to me or a joy to me, may not trigger to you. So each one sitting here is a different personality shaped up by their own mind, body, and the aura. And since your mind, body, and aura are different, we need to target differently to you. And this is where our strategy comes into picture, that how we can target. The first form can be emotional messaging. You might have seen many of the ads focusing on the emotional storytelling, how well you are able to connect to the emotional value of the user, the causage. And recently you would be imagining the amount of, say, marketing spend happening on Mahakumbh, because that is connecting to the emotional feel of the users. And then comes our symbols. Symbols or the sensory branding. Sensory branding is something which is rarely used. You might enter a restaurant and you start feeling more hungry. You enter a good jewelry store, you start feeling the vibe of getting a purchase. So this is where sensory branding comes into picture. And not only for the perspective of, say, a retail store, but also for a D2C brand. You can leverage your packaging to create a sensory experiences, either in terms of smell. It can be aroma marketing using aroma. Second, it can be a sound, like a jingle associated to a brand. And third, can be colors and the symbols. Because the people, it's easier to evoke a trust if you go back to any segment. And last but not least, there comes personalization. How well you are able to understand and tap the brain of a user. The more capable, the more enhanced you are in decoding the brain of a human before him. So virtually you are going to have a mentalist kind of approach who can guess what my user is going to think. And if you can imagine that, if you can guess that, what not, you are saving your money. Because right now, if your ads are not personalized, you are going to lose a significant portion of your money on the table. And that is something because you hadn't triggered that emotion, you don't have that trigger to connect to the user. And this personalization can be done in many things. The first thing is that we are tapping the demographic parameters. Demographic like age, gender, location, income group, and so on. The other can be psychological belief pattern. Ki, hey, he have searched something, let us target that. But again, these are all focusing on the actions or the neocortex part of the person, not the subconscious brain. And to tap to the subconscious brain, you need to understand the human psychology. You need to understand how a human mind is going to think. And this is where the neuromarketing comes into picture. With AI scaling it out, this has become easier to create a personalized experiences, whether we are able to create our personalization based on mind, body, and the soul or the spirit of the person which makes that. And the other two elements, the mind and the soul, are the trigger point or the divider for subconscious mind. And this is where it comes into picture. And it's not like that. I will tell you a very practical example. A very famous quote of Coca-Cola and Pepsi blind test. Many of you might have heard. So people were exposed to cola from both the brands and they were asked to test without being aware that which one is that. The people actually preferred Pepsi. But when were they asked to quote a brand, they quoted Coke. And this is where the Coca-Cola went into back into their manufacturing and came with new variants which matches the interest so as to maintain the loyalty. To summarize, in the last 30 seconds, I will leave with your question. Go back, introspect, think for 30 seconds. What's that emotional trigger or the blueprint you want to leave your user or your customer to memorize? It's a joy, happiness, or simply to the logical brain where you are lodging the money. Thank you so much.